Anyway, welcome to our Wings for Widows community Zoom call again this evening. We're really glad you chose to join us and take time out of your day. I don't know if it's raining where you are, but it's raining pretty hard where I am, so it's a good evening to be indoors. I'm Leanne Lorian. I'm one of the volunteer widows on the board of Wings for Widows. Did you know that we're the only organization in the nation that's dedicated to helping widows get on solid footing in their financial life for free? Dozens of women have been helped during the most difficult time of life, and we're really thrilled to be a part of that process. If you haven't taken advantage of our financial coaching yet, please do. It's just amazing. It's much more in-depth and thorough than anything you would get from a regular financial advisor. If you want to get to know us better, just visit our website. There's a ton of resources and really good material on there. Lists of wonderful resources, websites you can go to, all kinds of good information. In the very near future, you'll be receiving an invitation to enroll in one of our fall enrichment classes. This is a new thing that we're going to be offering this year, partly because of the COVID environment, but also because we just really want to enrich the lives of the people that we are working with. The 4 options this fall will be Grief Explorations. That's a class on understanding grief. A class called Discover Who You Are After Loss, more about kind of personal coaching, finding your way after you've kind of had to come up with a new normal. A class on consumer protection, protecting yourself, your home, your computer, your devices from fraud. And a class on home maintenance, which couldn't be more timely when we have Minnesota winter facing us one of these months. During the call, I'd ask you to keep your device muted at all times and to use the chat button at the bottom if you have a question. And Nate will take questions. We just want them to come via the chat button rather than unmuting and talking. We'll have about an hour with him. And Nate is our featured speaker tonight, and he is kind of a double whammy. He is a widower at that young age of 48, I believe, and has 6 children that he is raising as a single parent. He is also one of our financial coaches, and he, kind of the backstory is, he and Chris Bentley, who started Wings for Widows, met in business school at Carlson back in 2005. And Nate has been an investment advisor since 1995, and he is the owner and managing principal of Aegis Investment Management, LLC. He earned his bachelor's from St. Thomas, an MSc from the London School of Economics, and an MBA from the Carlson School at the University of Minnesota. Nate will be presenting 2 topics tonight. As a widower, his topic is decision-making in uncertain times. And as a financial coach, his topic is, what is behavioral finance and why should I care? I'm curious about that one especially. Thank you, Nate, so much for taking the time to come on and to share with us. And we're really glad to meet you and hear from you. Thanks for coming.
Okay, thank you and good evening. I am a widower, and that's part of my background here. I was widowed at the age of 46, so it's a little over 2 years ago. And my wife and I had been married for 22 years, and she had acquired or developed an aggressive cancer, and a rare one, which was quite shocking and very unexpected. We had celebrated our wedding anniversary, and 3 weeks after that, we were in a chemo lab, and so things developed very quickly for us, and very negatively, unfortunately. We went through the whole treatment for a violent disease with violent remedies, and there was significant challenges just with that, and learning how to navigate that challenge with children present from the ages of 6 to 21. And these were all very difficult conversations. People don't receive training for that type of thing. And my wife died 6 months after diagnosis. And that was a big transition time for me. Transitioned from being a caregiver to running or being the head of a family by myself. And so the transition was chaotic, and there wasn't a pause in the challenges that came quickly, and that's when I struggled to learn how to make decisions in this new environment. And it because I still had to make decisions. I mean, I had the family, I had the kids, I had a business and clients and property, and you couldn't not make decisions. And it's very challenging to do that. And it was challenging to desire to do that. And at first, I was extremely exhausted, physically exhausted, spiritually, emotionally, and there was a powerful impediment to functioning like I had in the past, like I was accustomed to act, and how I had up to then expected myself to act. And when thinking about this call, I was asked a month or so ago to say some things, and one of the things I found difficult with some of the information out there on the internet is that it tended to systematize our behavior in a way that I found unrealistic. For example, if you do this or that, or if you do these 3 things, then this will be the result. And I just didn't see my life that structured and ordered and under that type of control and certainty. So I combined that challenge with the fact that collectively, and by that I mean the country, we have these challenges that are pretty significant. There's the pandemic, there's the economic consequences of that, and there's social unrest. And if you think, if any one of these things by itself would be enough to greatly challenge a person, and the people on the call are going through all 4 of these things, the death of a spouse as the 4th one, at the same time. And it has the potential to be devastating. And so I think that I want to attempt to talk about these things because we still need to make decisions. We still need to live our lives. We still have family, and maybe some of us have children, um, and we have jobs. And so, what is the way to do this? So, I didn't want to talk about what exactly to decide. I wanted to talk about what what can we do prior to the decision to help us make better decisions, because in the course of my career as an investment advisor, you talk to a lot of people, you begin to see how people make decisions. And I think that there's a blockage in the sense that people will focus a lot on the decision, but not so much on what comes before the decision. What can we do to help us make decisions in a time of chaos and great uncertainty? And I think one of the things to uh, hold as a preamble is that there's a lot to life that is uncertain. And we live in a culture which attempts to disguise that fact with certitude. If we watch the news, we hear a lot of statistics, which tends to give us the impression that we know things in detail. We know the causes of things, for example. But then these events happen which throw into strong relief the fact that there's a lot in our lives that is ambiguous and uncertain. So decision making in a time of uncertainty, I think um, what I'll talk about first is some of the things that I observed about myself. I would add that I've never gone to a therapist or a psychiatrist. I've never sought professional help, but that was my decision. And so these are just personal observations that, quite frankly, has helped me a lot. And I think one of the keys to helping us through our situation is being able to pause and look at ourselves and critique what we're experiencing. So what I tried to do after my wife died, again, there are a lot of challenges. Some of them I've already talked about, but there were a lot. They were serious, and there is this great shock, which incapacitates us from time to time. What I tried to do is I tried to fix things, right? And that's part of my personality. I'm very ambitious. I set goals. I work hard and take risks. And this was a very peculiar situation. And what I tried to do was fix it. Objectives were varied: how to be happy again, how to build my business, how to restart things. There are 1,000 things to take care of. And I think that so far, up to that point, I was right. I was right in identifying decisions that I needed to make. However, things didn't get resolved in the fashion and timeliness that I would have preferred. uh, it felt like nothing was happening, like the oxygen was getting sucked out of my life the harder I worked to improve the situation and that of my children. And it's very much like a bird trapped in a net. And when the bird gets trapped in a net, it struggles to free itself, but it only becomes further entangled in the mess. And this was a cause of anxiety because I wasn't resolving anything because there was so much out of my control, but yet I was thinking that these things may be under my control. And so what am I saying? I'm saying that prior to making these decisions, prior to fixing things, I think we need to make sure that we are first of all in the right state of mind to make decisions, to develop the powers of self-observation, to enable us to make the best decisions. I think we need to currently acknowledge that we're in a vulnerable time of our lives, and when people are vulnerable, anxious, subject to anxiety, we don't make the best decisions. Okay, um, we must be especially careful to put our minds at rest and at peace and have calmness before we make decisions. So if there's an important decision, we often want to make it right away so that we can not feel anxious about it anymore. But what I'm suggesting people do is that if they don't have to make the decision right now, that you work hard to postpone the decision until you are at peace and in a more stable frame of mind. Now, there are some things that we can't postpone, but I think we need to ask ourselves how many decisions are like that? How many times must we decide something right now? I, I think those are few. And if we give ourselves time, it takes some pressure off. It allows us perhaps to learn something more about ourselves or the situation. Perhaps there's some sort of an epiphany between now and whenever it is that you decide that you need to make the decision, okay? But the fundamental principle or premise is that we need to recognize when we're vulnerable, and we need to recognize that if we can postpone a decision until we are better off, that's the most sensible thing. So one of the questions I faced was, should I sell my house? We were living in Texas at the time, and I decided to move back to Minnesota because that's where my family is, and I had the 6 kids, and I had great friends in Texas, but I didn't have family. But that's a huge decision, and it was something that I chose not to force, and so I didn't worry about it for a month or two, and that's just an example. So I want to move on to some of the steps that we can make to put us in a good position to make better decisions. And most of them are like prepare statements. So I'm trying to avoid telling people what to do. Because I don't think that's right. And I'll talk a little more about that later. But what is making decisions isn't just a decision, it's a way of thinking that leads up to the decision. And so what can we do to help ourselves in that situation? It's interesting that today in our culture, we think that freedom is having a choice. And this is a relatively recent assumption. If you go back to some of the ancient writers, no one believed that. They thought that freedom was not having a choice, but was making the right choice. And for someone who would object to that, they would respond, well, recall the time that you made a decision and it was a bad decision. How free did you feel after you made that bad decision? Now you have to unscrew up things. Now you have to apologize. You have you have added labor to correct or remediate the situation. And so the challenge is not just to have choices, but I think we have to recognize that there is a right choice or a better choice, not a perfect choice, because we seldom have perfect knowledge or perfect information. We do the best we can, but I think we need to make decisions with the assumption that there's a good way to do this and a not so good way. So the first point I want to make is ask yourself, how much time do I have to make this decision? I've talked about it a little bit before. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to get decisions out of the way, move on. We don't like to worry about things. I think that's normal. But that worry can lead to anxiety, and that is a very dangerous state of mind. So if you can build a little time into your decision, I think that that's the first step. Okay. And as I said before, there's very few decisions we need to make right now. Few. Unless you're in immediate personal danger, these are few in number. Okay. So what follows the first point are what I refer to as the prepare statements. So prepare, the number two, is prepare to say no. We've got a lot of challenges. We're under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. And some people, my wife was one of them, had a very hard time saying no. She was a people pleaser, and she wanted to be helpful. And I think that we need to recognize that we're in a situation that is very demanding, and it may be better for us to say no once in a while. Obviously, it's your judgment. You have to make a decision. It depends if you know who you're talking to, family or your boss or a stranger. But I think you should prepare yourself to say no. The third one is prepare to change your thoughts. I think we all have memories of the difficult times leading up to the death of a spouse. And personally, I've had, terrible memories of my wife's illness and the treatments and all of these things. And these are what I call red hot memories. And they're these thunderbolts that come out of the blue while you're going about your day, and they just stop you. And I think these are, I don't think that's a problem. But what I'm saying is that we acknowledge those, but if we start to dwell on these bad memories, that's going to prevent you from making a good decision. So just yesterday, I was meeting a client in a restaurant, and he wanted to go to a certain restaurant that my wife and I had gone to a lot, and I said, okay. And there weren't a lot of people in the restaurant, and I'm walking through it. It's virtually empty. I'm going to the patio out back. So I'm walking through the dining area, and I walk right by the table where my wife sat. The chair was right there. And that was a red hot memory for me. And it stopped me. And what went through my mind in those moments was all the fact that I'm not going to do that again. And that's very hard. And I think people on the call, I would imagine that you've had some of these times. You know, you're in the grocery store, you're walking down the street, you see the park bench you were sitting at, or I mean, it could be a hundred things, right? And but we need to learn how to change those thoughts into the good memories. And what I did was, you know, instead of thinking about the future and I'll never have those memories with my wife again, I thought about, okay, what we you know, we enjoyed ourselves that night. I remember what we talked about. I remember, you know, I remember her liking the wine. And so replacing the negative thoughts with the positive thoughts, I think is a critical to mitigating something that could seriously hamper you from acting in any manner. Um, Today we have the economy, the election, the riots, the, you know, whatever you want to add to the list, right? And we have people going on the media saying, you know, if you're not angry, then you don't care, and saying all of these things. You know, I think we shouldn't be allowing people to tell us how we feel when we're going through grieving. We feel the way we are. That's it. Um, and what I'm saying is, note that there are a lot of things going on in the world that are not in our control. Turn the page, change the channel, however you want to say it. I don't think that worrying about these things, and especially about, you know, if your husband had an illness where there was time leading up to his death, uh, there's this tendency to think of, oh, I wish I had told him before he died that, you know, I loved him, and I wish I said this, and I wish I said that, or I did this. And you know, it's very, very painful where you have these regrets about what we could have done better. And again, I don't necessarily think these are wrong, but I think it's good advice to have some type of control around those, and be able to put those thoughts and memories in a box, and maybe you open it up once in a while, but at some point we need to close the box and move on. So prepare to change your thoughts. Don't replay. Try to stop the regrets. And yeah, so that's point number 3. Point number 4 is prepare to set reasonable goals for yourself and your family. So I think this comes down a lot to personalities. Myself, I had a hard time with this. I'm ambitious, and I like to get things done, and you know, I'm very motivated, and I know what I want to do. And what I decided is that just simply is not going to work. I mean, that type of decision about making big strides in my career and accomplishing X, Y, or Z, I just decided I'm not going to do that. And I was in a situation where, you know what, I'm lucky if I can make it to Friday afternoon and still be functioning, because of the exhaustion, and because of the uncertainty, can build up and up and up to the point of incapacitation. And my goal, I'll share with you, was to stabilize the situation. It wasn't to, you know, double the size of my business or do this or that. I just wanted to not make mistakes and stabilize the situation. And so that's something for you to think about. Maybe that's a suitable goal for your situation. And I felt that was a big step for me, because it was pretty hard for me to accomplish things in the manner that I had in the past. So it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of humility. It's what I decided to do. And if I didn't achieve it, that's okay. And maybe that changes in a year or two or next week or next month. But right now, my main goal in my life is to stabilize the family situation. Okay. The next one, it's prepare to get advice from unexpected sources. I had this problem because a lot of people wanted to help me, but they haven't experienced what I have experienced. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, my friends are in their 40s or their 50s and they still have their wife. They felt very uncomfortable even being with me in social situations. I think they meant well. Some of them would say things that were hurtful, but they absolutely meant well. So, for example, people who say, "Oh, your wife's in a better place." Well, between you and I, that really is a dumb thing to say to somebody. I actually think my wife belongs down here with her kids. Um, but I understand what they were saying, but I didn't want to hear that, and that was unhelpful. I had a nanny come to my home for a while, and she said that I should go to my old house and just try to get over my problem. Well, I didn't want to go to my old house. Why would I want to go to my old house and have these types of memories right now? And I thought it was totally a bad idea. And so I said no. So there's an example of getting used to saying no. But she meant well, but it didn't go over very well for me. I've found better advice from people who I know, but not too well. They don't have a stake in the answer. They don't have a vested interest in what my family does or doesn't do. These are friends that I see once, twice, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. They know me. I trust them. And it's pretty easy to bounce a question off of them because I think they're going to tell me what they actually think I should do and not what they want me to do. So I don't know if you've had that situation, but it's something that I've had to do is I've had to open up my field of people who I get advice from. Um, the next thing is prepare to build rituals in your life. We live in this world where there's just chaos going on right now, and our lives are in some form of chaos, and that's in flux, right? Some days are more, and other days not so bad. Uh, we need to find things in our lives to stabilize the situation, which I referred to before, and help us build stability in a world that, has gone a little crazy right now. And maybe this is going to your church more than once a week, or maybe going, every day. Maybe it's going to the gym every day. Or it could be something like making coffee in the morning. And instead of getting up and worrying about the future, do something that's predictable and something that you can control and builds rituals into our lives. It could be complex, it could be simple, but I think that that's really, really important. And this isn't an old idea. Excuse me, this isn't a new idea. This is a pretty old idea. If you go back and look at some of the rules for living in the ancient monastic communities, they build rituals into their daily life. It could be gardening, um, there. It could be woodworking. It could be brewing beer. These monasteries were very good at setting um, setting rituals, and people used them as a step towards psychological stability. One of the things I would recommend is that if you're fighting off anxiety, when we're anxious and going through a period of anxiety, for me, it was always about something in the future. It wasn't really about something in the immediate present. It was something out into the future. And I think if you can develop a ritual that helps bring your mind into the present, takes your mind off the future, I think that that serves well to bring peace into your life. An example would be gardening, for example. There's a physical component to gardening, and that physical activity, in my opinion, helps you bring yourself into the present and get your mind off of what's down the road and what you may be ruminating about. And ruminating is your mind racing. When our minds race, that's never good. And how do you know? Well, if basically it's what if you're thinking what if this, what if that, what if you're ruminating. And I just don't think that that's a good time to be making decisions, because this pressure is building and it's like a pot that's about to boil over. And if I don't have to make a decision in that situation, I will intentionally delay until my mind settles down. So there we go, rituals. And well, that brings me to the last point, was just to focus on the present. I had already tied that in there. So I think just to summarize, be able to observe yourself, know when you're emotionally unstable, ask yourself, do I need to make decisions right now? The answer most likely will be no. Give yourself some breathing time. Hopefully, you'll settle down and be able to think clearly. Maybe some new ideas came into your mind, and make a decision at that time. And I don't think I've ever made a decision at 3 a.m. in the morning when I was worried about something and my mind was going 100 miles an hour. And nothing gets solved at 3 in the morning. Don't try it. Try to shut it off. Again, put it in a box, close the box. It's very hard to do, but maybe that picture will help you. So that concludes, some of the thoughts I have about it. I wanted to be respectful of time. I've got other thoughts, but maybe if there's interest, I can come back at a later date. But that's where I want to stop. And Leanne, I'll turn it over to you right now.
Okay, that's really practical. And speaking of gardening, the summer after my husband died, I had 9 yards of dirt delivered to my house, and I hauled it by wheelbarrow load down to the backyard and created a garden. I just had to do something that was hard work because I needed a place to put all of that emotion. And it exhausted me so that I wouldn't lay awake at night. So that last point, and it made me focus on that task and not on all the other stuff that was going on. So I found that to be very therapeutic.
Good.
Really good tips. Thank you very much. Nate, your second topic is, what is behavioral finance and why should I care? The non-financial realities of life to craft an appropriate wealth management strategy. I'm really curious about this because this climate has made it very hard for me to make good decisions about what to do with the money that I have to live on. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say on that topic. Oh, and I didn't ask, no questions came up on the chat box for this part, but maybe they will for the second part.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So behavioral finance is a relatively new academic field. And I'll start by comparing that to traditional finance. And this is all going to be brief. I'm not going to run through the graduate school level of what these things are. But basically, what I think is well for you to know is that traditional finance focuses on the mathematical aspects of investing. It looks at accounting statements, it looks at economic data, and what is the result of that is a purely rational decision. In fact, traditional finance assumes that people and markets are purely rational, that investors, us, have perfect self-control, that we don't have emotional realities that influence our behavior, and that we have access to a lot of information and we have the ability to perfectly interpret the information. And this was always problematic for me because I know that people make decisions for a lot of reasons. And the reason that I wanted to talk about it is because all of us are in a situation where the purely rational financial aspects of investing aren't good enough right now. Okay, we got a lot of pressure from widowhood and the social and economic environment that we're facing. And one of the things that I always struggled with the first few years as an investment advisor is that clients had a tendency to think that if there was an investment that I liked, therefore it should be good for everyone. How can investment A, which I have confidence in, be good for one person but not good for another person? And if an investment goes up 10%, why would that still have been a bad investment for somebody but a right one for another person? And I struggled for a while to come up with an analogy. And this is the analogy. Let's say that you want to take up the hobby of skydiving, and you've never done this before. So you're in the plane, you're strapped in, you got your equipment, you are sitting right next to your instructor, and you both jump out the plane. Now you both are doing the same thing. You, in this case, relate that to investing in the same investment. You're both doing the same thing, but do you really think that both of you are taking the same amount of risk? Well, no. Clearly, the person doing their first jump is taking more risk than the instructor who might be doing her 1,000th jump. But it's a little more nuanced to that, in that risk isn't just a number like what traditional finance would use. Traditional finance uses a number that describes the variability of returns. Behavioral finance would describe risk as the context of what you as an individual or a family are doing. Okay, so in the context of skydiving, the person doing the first jump, it's not the same thing. They're thinking about getting to the ground alive, where the trainer might be thinking about what beer she's going to have when they're done. Okay, so this is the same thing with investing. And what I'm trying to convey today is that I strongly urge you to take into consideration your personal situation right now when you think about investing, if you have funds to invest. Okay. If you invest in a growth investment, are you prepared that that doesn't work out? If the stock market goes down, are you in a position where you want one more thing in your life to worry about? Maybe, maybe not. And so when I talk to widows, I bring them through this discussion, and we have that. And you should have this discussion if you use an advisor as well, is what's important to me as a person right now. And I'll circle back right to the beginning of this call where I talked about objectives. And I said, and I told folks that my objective was to stabilize my life, and taking on investments that we may have confidence in but don't know what will happen. I think that I'm going to give you a word of caution on that. It may be rational. We can put together rational arguments for why the stock market went up today and why it's gone up since 3 months ago. But I would suggest that that's probably something that you have to think very carefully about, because we don't know what will happen tomorrow. We can have an opinion about the investment, but we don't know. And so the advice is to take into consideration what your goal is for yourself and your family. If it's to stabilize your life, then be biased towards stable, more predictable investments. There will always be a time to make another decision when it comes to finances, unless you're locked into something, but there'll always be a good decision to make a month from now or a year from now. And don't worry about being pressured to do something that in your gut you might not be ready to do. Now, unfortunately, there's some people who, when they see a widow, dollar signs flash in their head. Okay. You don't, I'm not suggesting that you should be suspicious of all people, because I think most people are good people. But you do have to be careful if you're in a situation where you feel pressured to do anything. Again, I don't think you need to make decisions right now. And so this is an example where you take behavioral finance, you take non-financial things, which are very real, very personal, has nothing to do with the economy or how much money the government or the Fed is spending. And you do what's right for you right now. And I think that that would be a perfectly sensible decision. So I've spared you the big academic background for behavioral finance, but it's essentially taking non-financial, personal, relevant circumstances and informing your activity because of that, and not doing a purely scientific examination of what you should be doing. So, there. That's it.
Nate, is there such a thing? I'm going to ask my question rather than use the chat button because I get to do that. But is there such a thing as kind of a risk tolerance questionnaire that you can take? And if so, should you take it more often than just once in a while to kind of get a feeling for what kinds of investments fit you best?
Yeah, there are a lot of things out there. You can get them from your advisor. You can get them online. Problem with those is that someone's risk tolerance can change frequently. That's a good discussion to have with an advisor if you use one. But financial planning is not a static thing. Okay, it's a fluid undertaking, and there's no such thing as a permanent financial plan. Well, some people can try it, but that would be foolish. So yeah, the answer to your question is yes.
Does, I don't see any other questions on the chat box. Does anyone have a question for Nate?
And I have a comment if I can chime in.
Sure.
It's interesting. So Nate, Nate and I are in the same profession, as you probably know. Uh, we always talk about risk tolerance, and when you see the market drop like it did in March, we started talking about loss tolerance, because everyone's risk tolerance is different when the market's moving up. When we're in a bull market, everybody's, and this is all proven by part of behavioral finances, is and I won't get into the terms because I can't remember half of them, but essentially when the market's a bull market, right, everybody's feeling confident, right, exuberant, emotionally excited and happy. We're making money. If you take one of these tests, and I don't believe any of them are very good, but they are out there, as Nate said, your risk tolerance will be much higher in a bull market. If we were to take that same test at the end of March, you get very different results. So loss tolerance is much different than risk tolerance. And most folks, are over exuberant about what their risk tolerance is until they experience a loss. So to Nate's point, it's really, you should be thinking about, can I afford to lose this? Because that's really more important when things go badly than,
Right.
as he was saying. Right, Nate?
Yeah, so a typical question on one of these is, something to the effect of, how would you feel if you lost 20%? Well, I think your answer depends. Have you already lost the 20%, or are you about to lose the 20%? So I don't like these questions either. Yeah, but it could be part of the solution. It could be a first step towards a conversation. I think that's the way to put it. So
Well, one of the things that we oftentimes say when we're coaching our widows is, you don't know what you don't know. And so I guess I think in that way, if you've never thought about investing, or perhaps your husband did all that, that took the IRA money and figured out what to do with it and whatnot, and you've never really considered that for yourself, it's maybe a good place to start. I mean, obviously with a discussion with someone who can help you through making those kinds of decisions.
yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Nate. This was just really, really good. And I'm so glad to get to know you better and to hear how you think. And I just thought that was, only a person that's gone through what you have can understand a lot of those, those things about making decisions when your mind is just going a million miles an hour. And it is very good to think, take those tips and write them down and be ready to really, really consider when we're making how we're making good decisions.
Okay.
So thank you
Well,
very
thank
much.
you, and I wish everyone the best. And
Thank you.
yeah. Okay.
I wanted to mention once again that all our Zoom calls or almost all of our Zoom calls are recorded. And if you go on the Wings for Widows website, you can just click a button and you'll be taken to our YouTube page where those, you can select the one you want to listen to. And sometimes, if you don't have a chance to hear the whole thing, or you want to take notes, that's a great way to recoup some of the lessons, or if you missed an evening. Our next speaker is August 26th, and her name is Helen Lockett L. And she was actually my grief share leader when I took grief share twice. I flunked it the first time. She let me take it again. She has led Grief Share at one of the large churches in our area for over a dozen years. She's also been a hospital chaplain, and she's currently the director of minority services for the state of Minnesota. So we're really lucky to get her to be able to come. So Helen will be on at 7 p.m. on August 26th, and she's going to talk about hope. And I'm sure that's a topic we all would love to hear. I really appreciate all the participation this evening. Tell others about these calls. And again, we will continue to do them as long as there's interest. And we're really thankful for all of you that have participated. It's such an encouragement just to see your faces. It looks like I've got a couple of people just saying thank you. Yes, several people, Nate, are saying thank you very much for your presentation. Really appreciate it. Have a good evening, everyone. Hope to see you in 2 weeks.